Hi, welcome to a special episode of Straight Talk Plus. After a great deal of interest about the conversation that we had with our guest, Mr. Safraz Ali, on the 1st of November, I've invited him back to continue that conversation where we talk about leadership, self-development, and career progression. As you might be aware, Safraz Ali is originally from the financial services and is a social entrepreneur and founder of the Pathway Group, which is a leading skills provider and which has a vision of changing lives through skills and work. So he's also a published author, and we'll be discussing that in more detail. Welcome, Safraz.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riaz. Much appreciated.
How are you?
Thank you for the opportunity once again. It was a lovely to meet up with you a few weeks back, and glad to be here again.
Well, thank you for coming back. I thought we were a bit tough on you last time, so we'll be a bit more gentle. It's just me here today, and it's very short conversation, but very much about the fact that we've got such positive feedback and people wanting to know more, and you know that there is that appetite and interest in regards to what you discussed around leadership. And you finished very eloquently that program with talking about, you know, mindfulness and keeping your chin up. And people wanted more tips along that way. So please do share. I mean, before we move on, I wanted to talk about, you know, your book, this one, Attract, Retain and Grow. And I read it. It was a really good read. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity once again. Really appreciate that. Our topic last time was quite far-ranging in terms of conversation points, and obviously being a TV show, sometimes you're limited in terms of what we can talk about, and there was a fair amount of reflection on the economy and where we were and the positioning as well. So my comment really was about remaining hopeful, doing what we need to do, what's in our power. So I talked about control. We can only control what we can control. Attitude is a choice, and you keep choosing. And from our perspective, we've got to start living above the line, which is about ownership, accountability, responsibility. It's very much easy to talk about below the line thinking, which is blame, excuses, and being in denial. I come across people now where all they talk about is the next year and how the year has been a bad year and we've had an awful year, and 2021 is going to be something better. But we've still got a few weeks left till 2020 to finish, and you've still got the moment of now, and I think we need to be more present in the now, deal with the now, and we're either hopeful about the future or we're fearful about the future, and I think we need to focus on the present, the now. We can't change the past. We can look forward to the future, but let's deal with the now, and I think that's a mindset. That's also from a practical level. It's very simple. It's just it's easy to say that, and I we have to remind ourselves a lot of these things we already know. Best advice is advice that you already know but you're not following. That's always the best advice. So if you're talking to somebody and you're going to them for advice, more or less 99% or 99.999% of what they're going to tell you already know, but you just needed to be told so you can reprogram that in your mind and go ahead. We're not learning necessarily new things. It's about applying things that we know. So I keep it simple, repeat the same things if need be. If being a broken record is not a bad thing, because sometimes you need to have that mantra, that level of conversation, and switch the mind back to focusing. And it's that deep thought, that focus that we need to actually, just get on with it. It's like, and we can sometimes over plan. And that's, I think sometimes, in life, I think that's not a great thing. And sometimes it's a case of, okay, we'll take it, as we go along, which I think is also negative. Everything is about balance. It's getting the balance that works for you. We need to be more emotionally savvy with ourselves, get to know what works for us, how we tick, and how my mind works, and apply whatever it is to get the best out of ourselves. And I think it's simple. Keeping it simple is the way, but oversimplifying it is also a danger. Complicating it is a massive danger. We can easily complicate things, and we can easily simplify things. It's keeping a reality check on some parts.
I would agree with what you've said. It's very much that we live in very uncertain times, and issues in our daily lives can be very complex. But as you said, it's about staying and focusing on the present and getting through day by day and planning accordingly. Moving back to the book that I showed earlier, Attract, Retain and Grow, having as a doctor, an academic doctor, I've looked at business literature, and it's so complex. It's written from psychological perspective. And then I picked up your book, and it was so easy to read, and you got the points across so much more effectively by just saying it like it is. Before I ask you to tell me a little bit more about that, what else I noticed was that you have woven equality and diversity right through the book. And this is missing in academic literature, because many of these books that have been written are very much from a middle class white male perspective. So thank you for writing this, and please do share the process that you did for this.
Okay, I originally started writing Canny Bites as for videos. So the purpose of that was to create videos, short, sharp videos, impactful videos that gets a message across. And then if somebody wants to look at it further, they can go away and do a deep dive. They can go and look at that subject. In some cases, we've got enough knowledge in our processor for us to start processing it and being aware. And for me, it's something called reticular activation system, which is effectively it's just activating that in the mind, in the subconscious, and being more aware and being more conscious. It's like, for example, Dr. Riaz, if you've got a say your daughter or somebody that has bought say I'll give an example, Nissan Micra. All of a sudden you start seeing Nissan Micras all over. They're all, and that's because your reticular activation system is noticing that, and we start being more conscious. And from my perspective, a lot of the learning that we have got, it's there in the background, but we don't apply it. And for me, knowledge it's not about amassing knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It's about knowledge for implementation and for the use. That's why one of the reasons why I say is that sometimes we live in an economy now, live in a world where we're learning at say 11 o'clock and we're applying at 12 o'clock, because that's how we work. So it's on demand learning. So you might be in a position where you want to learn something, you'll go on YouTube it, you'll go and research it. As long as we've got an understanding of how we get the information, that it's not about information. Information isn't power, knowledge isn't power. It's about how we go and get that and apply that. And for me, that's the key here. So it's about sharing bites, wisdom, which is there for individuals then to say, oh yes, I know about this, or yes, you know what, I need to look at this a little bit further, and then go on deep dive and look at it. In terms of the equality diversity thread, yes, I think from my perspective, it's something that we've been talking about for 20-21 years as as the head of Pathway Group. Our life started off as working in the asylum seeker refugee area, and we found that there's so much talent in this country. A lot of it is being underutilized, undercapitalized. Even now, we've got the labor force, where there's a mass underutilization of people's skills. We've got in-work poverty. We've got individuals who are working, but just at the sort of breadline. And it's about getting those individuals to add value to the economy. And I refer back to a report, which was a bit of a slightly academic report that the government commissioned. And if you haven't come across it, it's worth a read, which is the Ruby McGregor Smith review, which was about how the BAME community isn't being utilised by industry, by UK PLC, and how much the UK PLC economy is missing out by the underutilization of certain people's skill sets. These could be individuals that are in the mainstream community as well, of a certain age. So, for example, over 50s, knowledge of, so much wisdom there, where they may have been made redundant, or they're now in a different career. But what they could do is add a lot of value. They're just not given the right opportunities.
Could I interject? In a tweet, I think from a couple of days ago, and it's a term that you used in our last interview, was harder to reach communities. Would you say the BAME community falls under that label? And when we are so visible, why are we therefore much harder to reach? Because to me, that is a polarization of that discussion. But I would love to hear your insights on that.
Yeah, it's a term that the skill sector, the welfare to work arena, has used for many years, and it's the term that they use is the hard to reach communities. These are communities that are usually underrepresented with regard to learning. So particularly with regard to the skill sector, and it's the underrepresentation. It's quite easy to get the statistics to find out if there's equal representation or not, because the statistics are there in terms of access, in terms of the numbers, and then you can find out from that percentage, are there any communities that are there any gaps where they're not they're not utilizing the programs that are there. And then as a result of that, most government programs have got positive action in terms of going and attracting those particular communities, getting them involved, because there needs to be something to actually get them more engaged. And it's this engagement level, and it's about getting the getting a targeted approach, and changing the approach necessarily to reach out. And for me, it was saying the fact that they're not necessarily hard to reach. Yes, they may be disadvantaged, and they may not be accessing, but there might be it might be a different approach to reach them, but they are there for you to reach. But it's a matter of changing your approach to include them in with regard to any opportunities that are there. And it's really about thinking about communicating that message across, thinking about who is best to target those communities, and what works for them. And again, that's something I would say in every city, in every town, we can all do more. And part of that is about it's this term as well that you may have come across, which is not an academic term, but it's a term that I sometimes use, which is a birds of a feather flock together. So for yourself, you've got to try and get that cohort, get that community, and sometimes you've got to engage with people who can go and talk to those communities. But it's really getting the messages across, getting that engagement, getting that inclusion, getting that representation, and really from that perspective, then moving along. I mean, most people still work on the basis of word of mouth referrals, which works really well. We've got a sort of a small business that we operated a few years ago, which is foster care. And what we found was you can advertise in the back of the buses, you can advertise on digital platforms and so forth as much as you like, but it doesn't necessarily communicate to them because they're not seeing it. But as soon as maybe one of their friends or colleagues or somebody else is aware of that and goes on that platform, the person then starts thinking about it themselves. And it's about, for us, it's still that old platform, the network that you have, the people and people buy from people. People also learn from other people, as opposed to generic messages and generic sort of, you can advertise as much as you want, and and it's not just about advertising in different languages, but you need to have that in people's face through platforms, through interviews, like you do on Ramadan TV and many other platforms to get that message across really, and you're doing that really well, Dr. Riaz, in terms of bringing people on board and getting them to convey those messages.
Coming back to the current climate, which is we're currently in the second lockdown of the pandemic. What are your thoughts on the economy and how we will be moving forward in 2021?
I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are very hopeful about 2021, and I mean, this year has thrown everyone out of sync. Nobody could have planned the year that has been, and we've all had to be. It's been a year which has been unambiguous, definitely volatile, a lot of uncertainty, and people are looking for some certainty in the year coming. There are certain things that we now are more aware of. So there's certain aspects of it, some certain knowledge that we do have in terms of what is likely to happen. And I think from that perspective, obviously furlough, was extended. I would say that's a positive. In many cases, it's been extended till March. But what organizations are doing is that if the business can't run with the individuals, then they are going down the route of terminating and making people redundant anywhere. So the furlough doesn't necessarily stop that. In some cases, it may have delayed it in other cases, but inevitably, if the business can't afford to keep the staff on, if the economy is weakened, it's already very weak as it is in some areas, then regardless of the government support, which in all cases will be short term, it's not going to sustain that, and it's about sustainability. Businesses that have taken on the bounce back loans, the CBILS loans, the coronavirus business interruption loan schemes, those sort of things, they're going to be starting paying back in some cases the interest on those, and even though they can potentially take extend that and maybe get some payment holiday, you've got that part of it. If there's anybody who's deferred their VAT or deferred other taxes, payroll taxes or PAYE taxes and so forth, and even in terms of rates and so forth, all of these things are going to start coming back. And we're not far away from that. And when those pressures come on top, then you may see greater job losses, greater impact on the economy, and so those things are impending. So 2021 could be more of a difficult year in certain cases, where people have actually in some cases have been taking a payment holiday on their mortgage interest payments as well. There will be a period where those things have to be paid, and as an economy as a whole, our deficit, is, the deficit's there, but the total debt burden, has been doubled, and if you're now talking 2 trillion plus of debt that has to be paid back at a future time in some way or form. So inevitably, there's going to be some issues. So we just don't know, Dr. Riaz, in terms of the impact that it's going to have. But these are the things we do know with regard to pending consequences or pending factors.
Could I then ask then if, before there used to be this business model, the traditional business model, where we look at short-term, medium-term and long-term planning, I mean, that has now been taken on its head, and what you discussed early on in our conversation was on-demand learning and on-demand actionability. So, you know, how will you be planning 2021 ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be slightly shorter term. I mean, you know, from my perspective, and I've been saying this for a little while now, gone are the days where you can have a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan. You know, if you were to sit here and or even at the beginning of the year and say, well, actually, we've got a 5-year business plan, there's going to be a lot of guesswork in there. And that's the problem with some of these business plans where, you know, it's written for a particular purpose, but in reality, it doesn't really benefit you. And this is why they're just documents for the sake of a particular outcome. You know, it may be for the bank, it may be for a particular reason, but in reality, that's not your blueprint or pathway with regard to how you're going to operate. And I think that's what, you know, that's what's lacked before, is, you know, yeah, and even now I think it's even more so the fact that, you know, how do you effectively plan 5 years, 3 years, even, you know, how do you plan those those areas? And I think, then it goes back to sort of vision and missions, and then actually being a little bit more tactical in terms of, again, people throw the word strategy around. You've got objectives, strategies, and tactics, and they use the word interchangeably in terms of a strategy from a tactic, from an objective, from a goal, from a vision to a mission. And they're all the same in some people's eyes, but they're very, very clear differences. And I think we need to have these goals. We need to have these goals which are goal getting, not just about goal setting, not just about setting the goals, but actually being in a position which are goal getting, which needs to be smart, measurable, and to some level time bound. In terms of, you've got these what they call the smart targets, but rather than focusing on the SMART, just focus on the SM and the T. In terms of whether it's realistic or whether those sort of things you can leave to a certain level, but just be in a position where you can adjust that plan. So it's about planning, it's about doing, it's about measuring, testing and measuring, and then changing the plan accordingly. And but have your vision in terms of where you're looking at, have in terms of where I'm heading towards, but the plan will change, definitely will change in terms of how you get.
So what's the impact then on leadership and the whole mentoring and career progression aspects? I mean, when you put an employee out on furlough, is there an opportunity then for them to be able to use their time to go on a short course, or perhaps fulfill a gap that they wanted to address but didn't have the time beforehand? I mean, what would your advice be around that particular scenario?
I think we do live in a culture of lifelong learning, and a lot of the time it's about unlearning certain things, relearning new things, and re-looking at what our skill sets are. So we focus a lot on knowledge. We moved somewhat away from knowledge economy to a skills-based economy. So what skills do you have? And what we're all looking for is an ROI, a return on investment on our learning. So we moved away from learning for the sake of learning and for the enjoyment of learning to learning which is for a benefit, an ROI, a return on investment. And that is always going to be usually a different level of thinking and applying, as opposed to learning for knowledge purposes or learning for enjoyment purposes. So when you're learning in a skills-based economy, then it's about learning skills that are adaptable, but you can implement those skills. And it's also about understanding what the market is looking for and being able to meet the market needs. It's like if you're developing any product, and we as humans, as people, are in some aspects selling ourselves, and you've got to change according to what the market needs are, the demands are, and there's always going to be a demand for leadership. There's a void in some aspects of leadership, so leadership isn't going to go away. There's always a demand in terms of dealing with people. People, it's a HR. These are growing areas. Human resources, leadership, people, management are areas where there's growth. And what you find is that there's a lack of people with the skill sets to be adaptable, to be put into to those situations. It's not necessarily about what they've done in the past or their knowledge of the past, but it's those skill sets of being able to work with people, to inspire others, to manage themselves, manage others, and make things a bit more simple in some cases, communicate. Those sort of skills, they're always there. It's about how you develop people, how you grow people, and from my perspective, that's ever growing. That's ever growing.
It feeds very nicely into your the latest book. Just going to share it, where you talk about all these areas under those 3 sections. So I would highly recommend people to go out and buy it, and it's available on Amazon. Under Canny Bites, am I right, Sarfraz?
Yeah, Canny Bites. So this is the 3rd book, Dr. Riaz, which specifically talks about people. The first 2 books were what I call Bites of Wisdom. So 52 Bites of Wisdom, and then the second book was called Another 52 Bites of Wisdom. They're more generic, which is about developing the person themselves. It's about mindset, but it's also raising awareness. This is more about how you work with other people. From my perspective. You can't run a business without people. You can have a company without people. That could be just yourself in terms of a solopreneur venture. But if it's a business, it's always going to have other people, whether they're employed or whether they're contractors or whatever. It's always going to have people. There's no business without people, and it's about really how you attract the right people. How do you retain the culture that you're trying to create? It's not about retaining people for the sake of retaining them, because there might be some people that may not be suitable for the team. It may not be suitable for your business. And how do you create a culture which is high performing? How do you enable a culture which is aspirational? How do you create that environment? How do you keep people engaged? And we said earlier on, people buy from people, but people are also attracted now to other people in organizations. It's no longer about the employer brand; it's about personal branding. So it's about people are attracted to other people in teams, and then how do you grow the right people? How do you develop and grow the right people, and then by in turn, hopefully, you'll grow your business.
No, I was going to say sometimes that there is that issue when you've invested so much in your staff members that they then take that skill set and move elsewhere. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a very famous Richard Branson quote which says, what if I don't train them, and what if they stay here? That's there's more cost there than you investing in their time and so forth. At the end of the day, if we keep thinking about the fearfulness of what if this would happen or what if that would happen, then we'll never do anything. And I think you've got to do it with the right intention. You got to do it with the right thinking, right purpose. And there's going to be occasions where people do move on, but there's always positives in that as well. There's positive in every situation, and sometimes people who do move on, it might be the best thing for them. It might be the best thing for yourself, and they'll remember the journey that they've had with yourself, and you don't know how and when they might come back. So think of it as giving back, but also thinking of it the fact that I'm doing that for my self-interest as well. It's not just about for the in terms of giving back, but giving back for the purpose of what's right for the business, and make those decisions which are right for your business. For the short term and the longer term.
No, I was going to say we're coming towards the end of our conversation today, Sarfraz. I would really like you to leave us with something motivational, like you did last time, before we sign off.
Okay. You may have come across a saying, Dr. Riaz, which is called "sharpen the saw." there's another saying which is called sharp on the axe. And it's President Abraham Lincoln who actually said that. The fact that, what he would do is, if he was to do anything, he would cut, I think the example was that if I was to cut down a tree, what I would do is, if I had X amount of hours, I can't remember how many hours, I had 12 hours to cut down a tree, I would spend most of my time sharpening my axe, as opposed to initially straight away cutting down the tree. And I think what we all need to a certain level is working on ourselves, having reflective time, thinking about where we are, sharpening our axe, rather than doing. We're in the we live in an age and time where our diaries are packed, and we thrive on saying how busy we are. People just saying, I've not stopped all day, my phone hasn't stopped, and we live on that, and that becomes a badge of honor. For me, that's not a badge of honor. Take time out, empty your diary, empty your calendar, and sharpen the axe. And self-reflection, a little bit more self-awareness, I think that'll put us in good stead.
Thank you so much, Saz. Thank you for coming to speak to me at such short notice, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year when we have more availability in our diary and invite you back into the studio. But again, your words of wisdom throughout our conversation have been invaluable, and I look forward to speaking to you again. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.